Usually when you look at a pile of discarded clothes, maybe it's a bin at a local thrift store, or even just that overflowing chair at the corner of your bedroom, you just see a chore.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You just see clutter. Like it's something to bag up, donate, and completely forget about.
It just feels like a burden,
Yeah,
physical noise taking up space in your life.
exactly. But if you put on the right pair of glasses,
Mm-hmm.
that pile completely transforms. I mean, you aren't looking at old laundry anymore. You are actually looking at a high-yield asset class.
It's the raw material.
Right. It is the raw material for a compounding revenue engine, and a completely unprecedented one at that. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are extracting the mechanics of launching a highly profitable secondhand resale business online.
Which is just a fascinating space right now.
It really is. We're pulling from a comprehensive, freshly published guide that actually dropped today, April 23, 2026, titled Shopify Secondhand Store, Launch a Resale Business.
Yep. Fresh off the presses.
And our mission for this deep dive is to pull out the actionable steps, the hidden economics, and the common traps of this industry so you can understand exactly how modern resale works.
Right, because whether you want to spin up a side hustle or you're just insanely curious about where e-commerce is heading, this is the ultimate insider playbook.
Totally. And we really should kick this off with the macro data from the guide, right? Because the numbers really redefine what we're even talking about here.
Oh, absolutely. The global secondhand apparel market hit $256 billion in 2025.
Wait, $250 billion? That is wild.
It is. And the trajectory is, well, it's even steeper. It's projected to reach $393 billion by 2030.
Wow.
Yeah, secondhand is growing twice as fast as the total apparel retail market. And the demographic driver is the most crucial part. Over 70% of this growth is being driven by Gen Z and millennials.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because that demographic detail right there tells me this isn't like a pandemic hobby that just stuck around.
Yep.
This isn't just about occasionally selling an old jacket on an app to make rent. This is a massive generational shift in how people consume physical goods.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They view ownership completely differently. They want unique identities. They're highly conscious of sustainability. And, they're moving tremendous amounts of capital into these circular economies to get what they want.
Which brings us to the first major strategic decision in this guide. Like, where is this $256 billion actually changing hands?
That's the big question.
Because the instinct for most people, myself definitely included, is to immediately think of the big marketplace apps, right? Depop, Poshmark, eBay.
Sure.
But the source material makes a very aggressive argument for a major pivot, like leaving those built-in ecosystems to build your own dedicated storefront, like a Shopify site.
Which I know feels super counterintuitive, walking away from an app that millions of people open every single day.
Yeah, that sounds crazy.
Yeah, but you really have to look at the math of the transaction first. Marketplaces charge a hefty premium for that built-in audience. I mean, Poshmark takes a flat 20% on items over $15.
Ouch. 20% is huge.
Right, and eBay has these complex final value fees depending on the category. But if you operate your own dedicated store, the margins expand dramatically. The guy estimates that on a $100 sale on your own site, after standard payment processing, you net about $88.
So you're keeping an extra $8 to $10 every single time you sell something.
Exactly.
Over 1,000 sales, I mean, that is real capital. But wait, if I leave Depop, I'm giving up millions of users just scrolling on their phones. Isn't leaving a marketplace like moving your lemonade stand from a crowded mall to, like, a dirt road?
That's a great analogy.
Why give up the free foot traffic? No one is going to accidentally walk past a standalone website.
And that exact fear is what traps new sellers on marketplace platforms indefinitely. You're assuming it has to be a binary choice, that you either sell in the crowded mall or on the dirt road.
Okay, so it's not binary.
No. The winning mental model the source proposes is that marketplaces are for discovery and your store is for retention.
Oh, I see. Meaning you use both, but for entirely different reasons.
Precisely. You don't shut off eBay or Poshmark on day one. You run a hybrid model for, say, the first 6 to 12 months. You leverage those apps for the free foot traffic to find your first-time buyers.
Right.
But the magic happens in the fulfillment. When you ship that vintage jacket to the Depop buyer, you drop a high-quality physical insert into the package, like a little card that says, "Thanks for buying, get 15% off your next order directly at my site."
Ah, so you capture them in the crowded mall, but then you invite them to your private boutique down the street.
Exactly. And you do that to acquire the most valuable asset in e-commerce, which is customer ownership.
Because the marketplaces don't let you own that, right?
Nope. When a transaction happens on a marketplace, the app owns the relationship. They have the email. They control what that buyer sees next.
Wow. Yeah.
But when you funnel that buyer to your own site, you capture their email. You track their shopping history. You can market to them directly for free for the next 10 years. You basically build a compounding repeat buyer rate.
You are essentially using the marketplace's own algorithm to build your lifeboat.
That's exactly what it is.
That makes total sense. So, okay, the math works, the funnel strategy is sound. But a beautifully designed Shopify store is completely useless if the shelves are empty. Where is the actual physical inventory coming from?
Right, the fun part.
Yeah, this brings us to steps 1 and 2 of the guide's pipeline, which is sourcing.
And sourcing is where the digital strategy hits physical reality. The guide breaks down several methods, and each has a very different risk profile and operational flow.
Okay.
The most common starting point is the local thrift store. Your buy-in is incredibly low, maybe $1 to $5 an item.
But the variance is huge, isn't it? Like you could spend 3 hours in a thrift store and walk out with 2 decent shirts.
Oh, the signal-to-noise ratio is terrible.
Yeah.
You are sifting through hundreds of fast fashion items just to find one quality piece.
That's exhausting.
It is. Then you have estate sales and local auctions. The upfront cost is higher, but the margins can be substantially better because you can cherry pick. You might find an entire wardrobe from the 1970s that has been preserved perfectly.
Which sounds a lot more efficient than digging through bins. And then the guide mentions wholesale bulk, which sounds like the ultimate efficiency, just buying a massive pallet of clothes for $1 to $3 a pound.
It sounds like the holy grail of scaling, right?
Yeah.
But the source explicitly warns beginners against it, because when you buy a 500-pound bale of used clothing, you are buying blind. The data shows that typically only 30 to 50% of a bulk lot is actually in sellable condition.
Wait, so half of it is just garbage?
Literally garbage. Stained, torn, or just completely unmarketable. Plus, you need a warehouse space just to crack open the bale. You have to wash everything, and you have to pay to dispose of the waste. Yeah, it is a logistical nightmare if you don't have the infrastructure.
Okay, so if I'm new, I'm sticking to thrift and estate sales. But here is the problem. It is very easy to treat this like a treasure hunt. I mean, it's fun to find a rare band tee for $2.
It's a huge dopamine hit.
Exactly. But treating this like a serious business means stopping the treasure hunt mentality, right? It's less about finding a diamond in the rough and more about evaluating your time. How should a new seller realistically judge if a sourcing method is actually working?
Well, they need to track a metric the source heavily emphasizes, which is profit per hour spent.
Profit per hour spent. Okay.
Yeah. Let's walk through the unit economics of a single item to really illustrate why this metric separates the hobbyists from the real operators. Imagine you find a vintage sweatshirt at a thrift store. Your cost basis, what you paid at the register, is $5.
Okay, $5 out of pocket.
Right. You price it online at $35. When it sells, there's a $7 shipping cost, which the guide assumes you pass through to the buyer.
Makes sense.
So after the payment processor takes their small cut and you subtract your initial $5 investment, you net about $25.50 in pure profit.
I mean, $25 profit on one sweatshirt is great.
It is great. But the critical question is, how many hours of your life did it take to make that $25.50? You had to drive to the thrift store, dig for an hour to find it, drive home, wash it, set up lights, photograph it, measure it, write a listing, and eventually pack it and drive to the post office.
So that whole process took me 3 hours. I just worked for less than minimum wage.
Precisely. The goal is to calculate your total monthly profit from a specific sourcing channel and divide it by the total hours you spent doing it.
Okay, so tracking the actual labor.
Right. You might calculate that thrift stores effectively pay you $12 an hour, but hitting early Saturday estate sales nets you $45 an hour.
Wow, okay.
A real operator ruthlessly drops the thrift stores and doubles down on the estate sales.
You really have to be deeply unsentimental about your time. All right, let's say you've mastered sourcing. You have a rack of highly profitable vintage denim ready to go. Here is where the resale model throws a massive wrench into standard e-commerce.
Oh, definitely.
Like if I'm selling iPhone cases, I create one listing, set the quantity to 1,000, and go to sleep. But in resale, every single item you sell is quantity 1. How do you sell unique, one-of-one items at scale without totally confusing your buyers or creating a massive inventory headache.
This is the primary technical hurdle of the entire business. You have to understand how to build a unique SKU catalog.
Okay, let's define SKU really quickly for anyone who isn't deep into retail logistics.
Sure, a SKU is a stock-keeping unit. Think of it as the unique barcode or ID number for a specific product. In standard retail, one SKU represents thousands of identical items.
Like 1,000 identical iPhone cases.
Right. But in resale, every single SKU represents one physical object sitting in your house. The guide suggests a very specific naming convention to keep your sanity, something like category, date, and number. So DDMIM 2604001.
Got it. So I know exactly what it is when I listed it, and it's the first item of the day.
Yes. You set the quantity to 1 in your Shopify backend. When someone buys it, the system automatically flips the status to sold out. This prevents the nightmare scenario of accidental double selling.
Which happens a lot if you're running that hybrid model we talked about earlier, right?
Yeah.
If I have the same jacket listed on Depop, eBay, and my Shopify store, and someone buys it on Depop while I'm asleep.
Someone else could buy it on your Shopify store an hour later.
Oh, man.
Yeah, now you have 2 buyers, 1 jacket, and you have to cancel an order, which completely damages your seller rating and infuriates the customer.
So how do you solve that? You can't just be staring at your phone 24/7 waiting to delete listings.
You use cross-listing software. The guide mentions tools like Thriftly for mobile-focused sellers or Copy It. These apps sit right in the middle. You create the listing once in the software, and it pushes the jacket to all 3 platforms simultaneously. When it sells on Depop, the software instantly sends a signal to eBay and Shopify to pull the listing down.
That is brilliant. Okay, so we've solved the double selling problem, but how do you even figure out what to charge for something when there's literally only one of it in the world? Is it just pure guesswork?
It cannot be guesswork. Pricing consistency is crucial because arbitrary pricing destroys buyer trust. The guide outlines specific category multipliers based on historical data.
Give me an example.
For vintage clothing, the standard is pricing at 3 to 5 times your cost. Modern thrifted brands might only pull 2 to 4 times cost.
But wait, I noticed the guide says designer items are priced lower, like 1.5 to 2 times cost. Why would a designer piece have a lower multiplier than like an old band t-shirt?
Because the margin shifts to the sheer dollar volume. Think about it. If you buy a vintage tee for $5 and sell it for $25, that's a 5x multiplier, but you only put $20 in your pocket.
Right.
If you find a designer bag at an estate sale for $150 and sell it for $300, it's only a 2x multiplier, but you just put $150 in your pocket.
Percentage versus absolute dollars. Got it. But even within those multipliers, condition changes everything, right? Like a vintage Levi's jacket could look brand new, or it could look like it lost a fight with a lawnmower. How do you standardize condition?
You implement a rigid 5-tier grading scale. New, excellent, very good, good, and fair.
But isn't that totally subjective? Like, my very good might be your fair if you're a perfectionist.
It is subjective, which is exactly why the guide ties it to mechanical pricing deductions and visual proof. If an item has a significant flaw, like a noticeable hole or a broken zipper, it automatically drops a tier and you deduct 30% from your baseline price.
Makes sense.
And more importantly, you document that flaw visually.
Which takes us right into the photography aspect. The guide pushes a very lean setup. A foam board, phone tripod, a ring light. $50 total. But it enforces a strict 5-frame rule for every single item. Front shot, back shot, a styled shot, the brand label, and the flaws.
Yes, the flaws.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If I'm trying to sell this premium vintage jacket, doesn't taking a high-definition macro photo of a nasty coffee stain just completely kill the vibe? Why would I actively highlight the worst part of the product?
What's fascinating here is the psychology of the secondhand buyer. They aren't walking into a luxury boutique expecting perfection, right? They're looking for unique character. And above all, they expect honesty. Trust is your only competitive moat in this business.
Because if I hide this stain, they're just going to find it when they open the mail anyway.
Exactly. And what happens next? They initiate a return. Hiding flaws spikes your refund rate. In a business that relies on low margins and high labor, remember how long it takes to source and list an item? Processing returns will absolutely destroy your profit per hour.
Oh, right.
Counterintuitively, highlighting the flaw up front actually increases the conversion rate for the right buyer because they know exactly what they're getting.
Transparency as a conversion tool. I love that. And there's another transparency data point in this guide that genuinely shocked me. It's about listing flat measurements. taking a tape measure, laying the shirt flat, and typing out the chest, length, and sleeve measurements.
Super important.
The data shows that doing that makes buyers 3 times less likely to return an item.
Because vintage sizing is completely disconnected from modern reality. A size large from 1985 fits like a modern small. If a buyer relies on the tag, they will be extremely disappointed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Your measurements and your honest photos are essentially doing the heavy lifting of a physical dressing room.
Okay, so the item is sourced efficiently, priced mechanically, photographed with brutal honesty, and it finally sells. We are making money. But the guide raises a massive red flag in the final section.
It does.
It warns that fulfillment and taxes are where new resellers leak all the profit they just worked so hard to make. So let's talk about the operational guardrails. The boring mechanisms that actually keep the money in your bank account.
This is definitely the most common failure point. Let's start with getting the item out the door. The golden rule of resale operations is the 48-hour ship rule.
It has to be in the mail within 2 days of the click.
Yes, you state it on your website, and you execute it without fail. The data reveals that this single operational commitment drives repeat buyers far more effectively than sending out discount codes or packing the order in expensive, custom-branded tissue paper.
Really?
Yeah, speed builds immediate trust.
And how do we ship these unique items without eating our own margins?
Discipline. For apparel under £1, you always route it through USPS Ground Advantage. It is consistently the cheapest option. But the critical guardrail the guide insists on, you must insure any package over $100.
Because we are dealing with unique skis.
Right. If you sell a generic blender and the post office loses it, you just pull another blender off the shelf and ship it to the angry customer.
No big deal.
Right. But if the post office loses a one-of-one vintage tour shirt, it is gone forever. You cannot replace it. If it isn't insured, you lose the inventory, the revenue, and the shipping cost.
It's the leaky bucket problem. You can pour all the incredible marketing and brilliant sourcing into the top of your bucket, but if you're eating $3 extra in shipping per order because you didn't weigh it properly, the bottom of the bucket is completely missing.
Perfectly said.
And speaking of leaky buckets, we have to talk about the IRS, because the guide spends a lot of time on legal compliance and taxes, which makes sense, but reselling branded goods always feels a little, illicit to people. Like, is it actually legal for me to sell a used Patagonia jacket on my own website? Won't Patagonia send me a cease and desist?
This raises an important point of law, and the answer is rooted in something called the first sale doctrine.
First sale doctrine.
Right. Once a brand legally sells an item to a consumer, they exhaust their right to control the downstream distribution of that specific physical item. It is completely legal to resell authentic branded items. You own it, you can sell it.
Well, that is a relief. But the IRS doesn't care about Patagonia, they care about their cut.
And this is where new sellers face catastrophic tax bills if they aren't careful. It all comes down to a form called the 1099-K.
Let's break that down. What actually triggers a 1099-K?
When you use payment processors, whether it's Shopify Payments, PayPal, or Venmo for Business, those platforms are required by law to report your transaction volume to the IRS once you hit a certain threshold.
Okay.
They generate a 1099-K form, send a copy to the IRS, and send a copy to you.
And that form shows my gross sales.
Exactly. Gross volume. Every single dollar that flowed through the system. So let's say the form says you processed $40,000 in sales. The IRS looks at that and assumes you made $40,000 in pure profit, and they want to tax you on $40,000.
But I didn't profit 40 grand. I had to buy all those clothes. I spent $20,000 at thrift stores and estate sales to get that inventory.
And that $20,000 is your cost basis. It is what you paid to acquire the goods. But the IRS does not know your cost basis unless you prove it to them. If you cannot if you don't have receipts or a ledger, you will be taxed on the gross amount. You will literally pay taxes on money you never actually made.
Oh, wow. That would wipe out an entire year of work. How do you prevent that?
The guide is adamant. Track your cost basis from item number 1. It takes 5 seconds of data entry when you create the listing. You just add a line in your spreadsheet. Vintage denim paid $8.
That's it?
That's it. When tax season arrives, you show your accountant the ledger, deduct your cost basis from your gross sales, and only pay taxes on your actual profit.
5 seconds of data entry to save thousands of dollars. It's the ultimate unforced error if you skip it. So what does this all mean for you? If we synthesize everything we've pulled from this Shopify guide today, the ultimate thesis seems to be this. Resale success is about discipline over technology.
Without a doubt.
The quote-unquote boring path is the winning path. Sourcing consistently, tracking your hourly value, grading items with brutal honesty, and shipping reliably within 48 hours. That basic operational discipline beats a highly optimized, expensive tech setup every single time.
It really does. Speed of inventory turnover and high buyer trust will always outperform architectural elegance on the back end.
It's a fascinating blueprint. But as we wrap up, I keep thinking about that macro data from the beginning. Approaching a $400 billion market, Gen Z driving the volume, it makes me wonder where the larger concept of retail is even going.
If you project these numbers forward, it forces you to rethink the very concept of a wardrobe.
How so?
With the secondhand market expanding this rapidly and the digital friction of reselling an item dropping to almost zero, are we approaching a future where we never truly own our clothes anymore?
What do you mean?
Think about the life cycle of a garment in this new ecosystem. Are our closets just becoming temporary holding spaces? Like, are we simply renting these garments, holding on to them for a season or two, wearing them, and then seamlessly selling them back into this massive, circulating global resale pipeline?
Wow, that is a wild paradigm shift. You aren't buying a sweater, you're just taking out a short-term lease on a high-yield asset, something to ponder the next time you get dressed, or the next time you walk past that messy pile of clothes on your floor. It's not laundry, it's the global supply chain. That's all for today's deep dive. We'll see you next time.